Speaker, here I am again tonight at the hour of 12:14 a.m. because, Mr. Speaker, fair ferry funding is a critical issue to Vancouver Islanders, to coastal British Columbians, and it's such a serious issue that it can't go unanswered, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure that the Liberals were hoping I wouldn't show up tonight, Mr. Speaker, but here I am. And I'm here because ferry affordability, economic competitiveness, and transportation equity matter to the nearly 1 million people who call Vancouver Island home and to the coastal communities that depend on BC ferries every day. And for many of my constituents, BC ferries isn't just a convenience, it's a necessity, Mr. Speaker. It's a critical transportation link connecting people to work, healthcare, education, family, and economic opportunity. And this Liberal government, Mr. Speaker, they recognize ferries as an essential transportation infrastructure in Atlantic Canada, but it continues to treat British Columbia differently. Last July, the Prime Minister announced a 50% reduction in fares on federally supported ferry routes in Atlantic Canada. And that decision, Mr. Speaker, recognized an important reality. Ferry affordability matters because ferry transportation is essential infrastructure when we have the longest coastline, Mr. Speaker, in the world. And I agree with that funding. The question is why the same principle doesn't apply to British Columbia. The people of BC pay the same federal taxes as Canadians living in Atlantic Canada. Yet when it comes to ferry funding, we receive dramatically different levels of support. BC Ferries is one of the largest ferry systems in the world. It operates 25 routes, serves approximately 1,600 kilometers of coastline and maintains 47 terminals, operates a fleet of 37 vessels, and carries more than 22 million passengers a year. And according to the Library of Parliament, federal operational funding accounts for approximately 3% of BC Ferries' operating revenues. By comparison, Mr. Speaker, federal funding covers approximately 43% of operating costs for federally supported ferry services in Atlantic Canada. This disparity is clearly, it's also evident, Mr. Speaker, on a per capita basis. British Columbians receive approximately $5 to $6 per person in federal operational ferry support, while Atlantic Canadians receive approximately $125 a person. Those numbers reveal a significant imbalance in how the federal government supports essential transportation infrastructure across the country. Let me be clear. This isn't an argument against supporting Atlantic Canada. I support those investments. This is an argument for fairness. BC is currently in the midst of a ferry fare review. And Mr. Speaker, it's around their services. BC Ferries has warned that without additional funding, customers could face fare increases of more than 30% over the coming years. Reductions in services could happen, Mr. Speaker, or both. At a time when Canadians are struggling with the cost of living, that prospect should concern every member in this House, especially coastal MPs from BC. And the current funding framework is rooted in historical arrangements, Mr. Speaker, developed decades ago, when Vancouver Island had roughly half its current population. Today, Vancouver Island is approaching 1 million residents and is comparable to the size of New Zealand's South Island. It's home to a major regional economy that depends on reliable and affordable ferry transportation. If the current model no longer reflects the realities of modern Canada, then it's time for a review and a modification and fixing this agreement. Vancouver Islanders and coastal people in BC shouldn't have to become a province to qualify for fair federal support for essential transportation infrastructure from the federal government. And if ferry affordability matters in Atlantic Canada, it should matter in British Columbia. Mr. Speaker, I'm calling for a real response tonight from this federal government, and we need to see action for coastal British Columbians.
Parliament Secretary, the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to speak today about the importance of ferry services in Canada and reaffirm our government's commitment to ensuring that these services remain reliable, affordable, and sustainable for generations. Ferries are lifelines for communities, and they are a responsibility that this government takes seriously. From visiting friends and families to getting goods to market, Canadian and businesses across Canada rely on safe and efficient ferry services to keep communities connected and to help build an economy that works for everyone. Over on the Pacific Coast, Mr. Speaker, BC Ferries is one of the largest ferry operators in the world, carrying more than 22 million passengers and 9 million vehicles each year. It's an essential public service that is critical to the daily lives of British Columbians. It operates as an independently managed, publicly owned Canadian company with the single voting share held by the provincial government BC Ferry Authority. For the residents of Vancouver Island, the Gulf Islands, the Sunshine Coast, and countless smaller coastal communities, ferries are not a convenience. They're the only connection to healthcare, education, and opportunity. The Government of Canada has long recognized this reality. Since 1977, Canada has provided an indexed annual contribution to the province of British Columbia, recognizing that ferries are part of the provincial highway system. This year alone, that assistance amounts to nearly $38.6 million. This is a tangible expression of the partnership between Ottawa and British Columbia. During the pandemic, federal funding through the Safe Restart Agreement allowed ferries to continue to sail. Without this partnership, communities would have had to deal with higher fares or reduced services. Neither option were acceptable, and the government stepped in to keep the system afloat. The Government of Canada has also taken steps to support ferry operators in Canada, including through the removal of importation duties on used ferries and providing loans to BC Ferries to help renew its fleet with modern vessels. These efforts are supported by the National Shipbuilding Strategy. Since 2012, this strategy has created or maintained more than 20,000 jobs per year, contributed tens of billions of dollars to our GDP, and restored stability to a sector that was once plagued by boom and bust cycles. Mr. Speaker, ferries are not regional amenities. They are part of the national infrastructure. They are constitutional obligations in the east, vital corridors in the west, and vital arteries everywhere else. Investing in ferry services is an investment in Canadians, in communities, and in the unity of our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Courtenay-Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague first for staying up late tonight to be able to show up for this important debate. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to correct a couple of things. First of all, the pandemic relief that the federal government provided to BC Ferries, they also provided that to the East Coast. It was equal in terms of per capita. In terms of the loans that she cited, they're repayable loans. Even the loan interest at $26 million a year and the $38 million, Mr. Speaker, and when you look at loan savings per year over 25 years, that doesn't even come close to the hundreds of millions of dollars that the federal government subsidizes on the East Coast. There's 350,000 passengers approximately on the East Coast, 22 million at BC Ferries. Yet, Mr. Speaker, they gave hundreds of millions of dollars to Atlantic Canada, which again we support, but they shortchanged British Columbians. It's far, Mr. Speaker, it's gone far too long before this government has not reviewed this, the essential ferry funding for British Columbians. It's time for them to fix it, Mr. Speaker. The population of Vancouver Island is more than the population of New Brunswick, more than Newfoundland and PEI together, and almost the same as Nova Scotia. This is long overdue. I'm not here at 12:22 p.m. a.m. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, because I don't think this is fair. This is unfair.
Now, Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his work and for his advocacy on this important issue. As I mentioned before, ferry services in Canada are a lifeline for communities that get goods to market and support the economy. BC Ferry is one of the largest ferry operators in the world, provides an essential public service that plays a critical role on the day-to-day lives of British Columbians in terms of bringing together smaller communities and facilitating connection to key services, such as doctor appointments and education. And so we're very well aware of the importance of the ferries to these communities. That's why since 1977, we've provided an indexed annual contribution to the province of British Columbia for the coastal ferry service within the province. This year alone, it's nearly $38.6 million. In exchange for an annual grant, the province of British Columbia assumes sole responsibility for determining which ferry services receive financial assistance, and the Government of Canada was relieved of all obligations related to the funding and operation of ferry service within the province. In addition to the grant, we also provide funding to BC Ferry.
I'm afraid the time has expired. Order. The honourable members for York Durham and Calgary Crowfoot not being present during the adjournment to raise during the adjournment proceedings the matters for which notices have been given. The notices are deemed withdrawn. Order. The motion to adjourn the House is now deemed been adopted at this time, and this House stands adjourned until later this same day at 2:00 p.m. pursuant to Standing Order 24-1.